No, that's perfect, Alex. Thank you very much. And you've already answered a lot of my questions. That was really very helpful. And one thing that's come through, I think, from all of the speakers is that we mustn't wait. The world hasn't gone digital yet, and so there are issues with banks and their clients going digital. But we can't wait. We need governments, and for anyone who's listening that's on the sovereign side of life, governments to adopt the model laws from UNCITRAL on digitization. We need global adoption of the legal entity identifier that we all know about. And of course, we're all collaborating to create digital standards in trade, which is an initiative that's going to be up and running in the second quarter. But we mustn't wait. Do you want to sort of rapid fire? You want to talk about some of the workarounds? I mean, you've already mentioned a couple of them. But is there anything else you guys want to add to that quickly before I get into some other detail?
Can I maybe mention something, Steve? So,
please.
So what we noticed from a Bolero perspective, and I'm sure the same must be true for Wave and for essDOCS as well, is that we see, especially in the month of March of this year, which when sort of COVID really hit business, we see a huge increase of the issuance of EBLs. However, what we don't see yet is a big spike on the e-presentation side. So that basically tells me a few things, is that the corporates are already switching for the open account transactions to start using EBLs more, which also makes sense because of course it's easier in an open account setup, to switch more quickly than it is for, amending LCs or issuing new letters of credit subject to EUCP and making sure that the whole ecosystem is up and running, including the banks. But you can already see that there's a shift happening right now in the open account space. So I think from a banking perspective, and that's the angle for today, we should still remember, and I also mentioned it in the ICC groups where I'm also a member of, is we have to think that global trade, 80%, and in some countries like India, it's even 86%, is still done on open account. So the shifts we see happening in open account will also eventually hit, the traditional trade. So I think that's another plus to, prepare, to your point, Steve, and wait no longer to make sure that the banking environment is also preparing for the shift to digital.
Yes.
Yeah, Steve. So we've seen something similar. We've got a mining company who decided to use electronic documents as their business continuity plan. So they went to 31 steel mills in China that we didn't already have on our network. Of which 21 have now signed up, 5 are in the process of reviewing our legal agreement, and 6 we haven't yet been introduced to. But those 21 have been signed up and onboarded within a few weeks. But some of them can't transact because there's some banks missing or some branches missing. And one of the issues from working from home for people is it's already a workaround to people's normal processes, and now changing and accepting electronic documents at the same time is definitely going to be a challenge for the banks. And I think ultimately, a lot of us here have a lot of experience, and we can help you through that process.
Yes. From my end, I will actually, I'll be happy to actually mention that one of the main, I would say, issues that the banks used to, as I mentioned, they used to take all the heavy lifting, which means that the bank will have to ensure that, for example, the bill of lading can be released at the customer, the destination. In paper, they are not checking it. So I would say that the major change by having the corporates and the carriers that are now promoting the service from their end, that it's not the problem of the banks anymore. And when you are looking at trade from the eyes of a carrier or a corporate, they don't let the facts confuse them, let's say like that, which means that we've had, of course, when you have a letter of credit, everything will be by the book based on the requirements of the letter of credit. But in an open account, and as mentioned, many will move to electronic originals instead of way bills, because this reduces the risk even without banking being involved. So in many cases, we have electronic documents even going to Brazil, for example, which is a very complicated market. And the carriers will help the corporate to solve it and to ensure that it can be released at the destination. Same thing goes to other, let's say, more complicated markets. At this point, going digital will actually mean for a bank that he's just digitizing his own business from his own egoistic principles, I would say, or his own egoistic interest, while the problems of customs, the problem with Chamber of Commerce, the problem with everything else will be just dealt with the other, using the other participants. Now it's not just the banks and ICC who are promoting it. Now it's practically everyone. So it's not just the creation of the network, it's also the finding solutions for everything else. We've had all types of workarounds. It's even impossible to give examples because every scenario existed between the electronic presentation of just scanned documents, not the bill of lading, of course, but others, because some certificate authority in, I don't know, somewhere in the world just they don't have internet. So all the problems are being solved. And it's not just by the banks.
Yeah, I think there is a recognized imperative obligation at each and every component part of the trade ecosystem, companies, ports, customs, banks, importers, logistics. Everyone needs to get with it. It's just this is too serious not to. We're putting too much in jeopardy. So if I'm a bank, I'm thinking about moving forward. I mean, just the implementation, Alex, you made it sound pretty easy, but I mean, is it really that easy? The implementation into my bank with integrating with my systems and then having to onboard all of my clients. It sounds like a nightmare. But it's not? Question?
No, I think those are two questions. There's three parts to a bank moving to electronic documents. One is the internal sign-offs. Those are going to be change management. They're going to be security. They're going to be legal. That is not quick. The fastest we've seen a bank do those is a couple of months. On average, it takes a bank a year. Actually adopting the solution, because for us, there's no software to adopt. We can set you up and train you within 2 days. So actual use of electronic documents going live is easy. Building up the network also takes time. Although, again, that's not only the responsibility of the bank. We work with the bank. We have an entire team whose job is to help the bank build up the network, help the bank's corporates build up their network. So essentially, that is a sort of partnership approach, I guess, in digitizing the network.
Thanks. Just very briefly, if you want to mention anything, Jaco?
Yes, I totally agree. It's the internal decision-making process in banks with all these various stakeholders is really what's the most time-consuming. Getting them up and running, trained, signed up, using the system which can be used as a standalone. That's not the part that takes time.
Also from our end, the technology is never the problem. The sign-offs, this is one of the main reasons why the customer demand is very important. We will never approach a bank unless we have very concrete demand from its own customer. Now, of course, the customer will usually use multiple banks, but they will select one that they want to partner with in the beginning. Now, it's not a matter of it's just adapting to the new future. We definitely see it. Everyone here on the line or on the webinar can see it. And from the technology perspective, I'm sure that every service provider can provide you either a complete standalone on a cloud or local installation. Everyone is very flexible. The technology is never the problem. It's the actually believing that the business will be digitized. And now we can see that it is happening, and the fastest to adapt. It's
and maybe
advantage in many cases.
Yeah, and Gadi, maybe further to your point as well, is like what you see with the other digitization projects where banks are involved. Those are usually proof of concepts and trying out new ways to see if there's client demand. Where we tap into with our solutions, we tap into business as usual. Things that the banks have been doing for hundreds of years sometimes, and then suddenly you bring in a new element of digitization, and then, as some people just start to, you know, oh, this is new, this is scary, you know, I've been doing things, you know, the same way for decades in my current position. How do I change? How do I adopt? So that's also another challenge that we face, you know, from a business as usual perspective.
Yeah, 100%. Actually, I do enjoy that it moved to a panel. And so another very interesting point that we are seeing is that when banks approach a corporate, they will contact the financial department, which in many cases, they don't even see the paper, so they don't suffer from it. So it's much harder for a bank, putting aside the regulatory barrier or the regulatory constraint, I don't know, the policy not to promote a third-party service. When a bank is contacting a corporate, it will go to the financial department, which in many cases are not even seeing the bills of lading, so they definitely are not suffering from it. Now, they care about a completely different set of issues, which is what is the cost of the financing, which means that they have different problems. When a carrier goes to a corporate, he goes directly to the person who is handling the paper, and that was faced a loss of bill of lading. So it's also, which means that everything has changed. And I personally, which means that I believe that the main thing that will get the industry to be digitized, and the fastest bank to adapt will actually enjoy it, is the absolute decentralization of the requirements. Of course, I'm pushing the word decentralized whenever I can. When you decentralize the effort from the banking to everyone else, it's a completely different way of onboarding, and we are all seeing it.
Could you guys talk, thank you for that. Could you guys talk just very quickly to cost? How does that work? Is it astronomical? Is it, could you give the viewers just sort of a sense for that, please? Because I'm sure that's daunting for a lot of people who may be nervous to ask.
The more, the better.
What, the more cost, the better?
Of course. I mean, we take it.
Yeah. So basically, from a Bolero perspective, we have a very simple module. It's an annual subscription, and it's a cost per transaction, and there's no you know, one price or setup you know, suits all. It depends on, you know, the market. It depends on, you know, the counterparties. It depends on the countries. But usually that's a very easy model from our perspective.
Yeah, we have tranched transactions with discounts for countries in emerging markets.
Thank you.
Yes, we actually charge the carriers, not so much the banks at this point. It's a slightly different project. I would say product. So we charge the issuer or the originator of the document. So if a bank issues a guarantee, he will pay, but for bills of lading, he is not actually required to pay.
Thank you. Quickly on compliance, anti-money laundering and so on. I see some sort of questions coming up. Could you just speak very briefly to the role that the digitization of documents plays in compliance and operational risk, please? Jaco?
Shall I start? Okay, so of course compliance is becoming an ever-increasing nightmare for the banks, right? It's the cost of, you know, running compliance departments and making sure that you can screen everything. The moment that you are moving towards digitization, and for instance you are able to have your documents electronically available, that already, you know, reduces the risks of, you know, good documents getting lost or you know, fraud being committed, you know, like people changing things in documents that you don't really want them to change. But also, you know, having access to digital documents can make compliance screening much easier, either through your existing tools or tools, you know, that I'm sure all of us can, you know, partner up and provide to you. Often, sometimes the banks do still want to stick to their existing compliance systems, but it's one thing, you know, if you have to, for instance, scan paper documents, and then use that data to do an automated compliance check. If you have native electronic documents, of course, the quality of the data is much better.
Yes.
Gentlemen, I want to thank you very much for participating in this panel. I think it's been really helpful. I've learned a lot. And if the viewers, the listeners want to contact any of the companies, I'm sure you can find them very easily through the links that we've provided on the webinar. But if not, for some reason, just come into contact with us. and we'll direct you accordingly. As we've discussed, this is a really, really critical issue on a historic kind of level. I don't think that's an overstatement, to ensure the safety of global trade and supply chains and getting people their food and medicine and so on and so forth. So whatever it takes, let's move forward. We'll be planning on doing some of these webinars, I think, with some regularity, maybe once a month. So please stay tuned. We'll and if you have any ideas for topics, please feel free to share them. Thank you so much again, and thanks to ICC Academy for facilitating.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks everyone else.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you. So as a reminder, we are hosting live broadcasts on this topic in addition to other trade topics like the Incoterms rules, cryptocurrency, leadership coaching, and many others. So sign up on our website for free and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And ladies and gentlemen, this has been another episode of the COVID-19 briefing. See you next time. Thank you, everyone.
Well done, Thomas.
Thank you. See you next time.
Bye, guys.
I'm going to radio or television. Thanks.
Thanks, Captain Ahab.
Yeah, exactly.
Go forth. You're free.
And digitize.
Cross the desert and digitize, and everyone will leave you alone.
Cheers, Steve. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Steve. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye, guys.
Stay safe.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye, guys.
Stay safe.
Bye-bye,
guys.
It was good. Really, it was good. Thank you.